back down at Jeremy and Megan's beautiful garden, the Bristal Briar.
Yep, the Bristal Briar.
We need a name for our garden, Steph. Why don't we have a name for our garden? Okay, so if you follow the channel, I guess it was last year when this project went in.
13 months ago.
13 months ago.
13, 14,
and so we do a video leading up to the construction of it, and then another video with it finished, and then a couple sparse plants planted up on here. And now look, just a few months into the spring, how much it's completely covered. In this video, we're going to talk about great ground covers and the purpose of them. You want to jump in and talk about?
Yeah, I mean, ground cover, I gave a lot of thought to what does it mean to be a ground cover, and I guess that I came to the conclusion that means it covers the ground. And so 13-month-old berm, I blew my whole budget on rock, so I didn't have much left for plants. Right. But you can't really see much soil anymore. There's still some patches up there that are visible when you're up on top. But things have filled in so much, not just because there's great soil, but because many of the plantings initially were chosen because they weren't that expensive, and they would reseed, or they would run around really fast. They would grow fast.
And last year, example of that was watermelons. You put watermelons up there because you could get the ground covered in a season and keep some weeds down while he's waiting for other things to happen. Go ahead, I'm interrupting.
No, and there's watermelons up there again, although now they don't have nearly as much room to grow. I think I'll still get some nice fruits on the south face. Rudbeckia hirta here these are all seedlings from the plants that I put in last year, and they're just coming into flower now. One of the great things about ground covers versus maybe just mulch or nothing at all is, some of these are getting out of bounds. These are getting over the top of one of my favorite junipers here. Yeah. But the nice thing about this is all I have to do is just pull it up. Yeah. If I don't like it, then I edit it. Yeah. And I'd much rather edit plants that are desirable.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Than have to fight weeds that are unwanted. So that's, irrigation in here, all this helps things grow fast. And so over the next couple days, I need to go in here and get some of these beautiful plants off of other beautiful plants.
Right, yeah, and rescue some of the permanent.
That's right.
Some of the permanent pieces that are here. But you've got ground covers just all over this thing.
I do.
Yeah, and all kinds of different ones. And we're going to jump around and talk about 10 of Jeremy's favorite ground covers out of hundreds that are actually in this garden.
Yeah. Yeah, we need like a 10-part series or something.
Yeah, right.
But and I mean, there's all those ground covers in here because honestly, I'm tired of weeding. I don't want to weed so much anymore. I don't want to have to mulch all the time. Less water for sure. Yeah. Another great thing that ground covers do, even if they don't defeat the weeds, sometimes ground covers obscure the weeds. Yeah. If you don't see them, they're not there, right? In most cases.
One that we see in a lot of gardens and used in a lot of containers.
Yeah, hanging basket, classic hanging basket plant.
Yeah, talk about this one.
Dichondra Silver Falls. I bought a bunch of these just wondering, well, how would they do as a ground cover? Yeah. And it blew me away last year because they grow so fast, just like you'd expect an annual to do. And then it made it through 11 degrees everywhere I put it.
Right.
Which, I'll just say, as beautiful as this plant is, I'm a little on the fence about it because it's a little scary to see it do that well. Right. So I would say the jury's still out. But for a weed choking mass that it is, it can take it dry. It can take full sun. You can see it growing under there in some shade as well. It's extremely durable. Zone 7B, 8A. I think a real 7B winter might have finished it, but 11 degrees, just fine. Yeah. But here it is growing very, very quickly. It's already grown about 4 feet this year. And here it is mid-June.
Right.
So
yeah.
That's
So some ground covers will be a little more aggressive than others. But if somebody's in a cold area, so if you're watching this and you're in zone 5 or 6, and you're seeing this in a hanging basket or you're seeing this in a little 4-inch pot, feel free to put it in the ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let it cover some ground for the summer, and then the winter will take care of its aggressiveness.
It will take care of it like I assumed it would be taken care of here.
And you could probably take a couple cuttings off of it and overwinter it
very easily
in the house, and then have it, you know what I mean, something that you can do that way, like we do with coleus and a couple other things.
Another thing I've noticed about this plant, for what it's worth, it doesn't necessarily choke out all the weeds. But it completely obscures things like prostrate spurge. I can't, from any distance at all, even if they're growing together, The only plant that I see is the Dichondra, which
Yeah,
it's just for note. It's very interesting.
It's a great color when, you know, just
Yeah.
around these other darker green things. This is one we've actually talked about a few times recently because it's such a show-off. Yeah, this is number 2 here.
It really is. Juniperous Conferta All Gold. And this came out, I know it hit Plant Delight's nursery shelves 10 or 11 years ago. I think 11 years ago. And I said, I want the first ones. And I bought the first 5 that Plant Delight sold. And all 5 of them are here, actually. And you can almost see where they were originally planted. 1 year ago, I had my first Agave ovatifolia bloom, and it's gone. There's the stump, and you can see the all gold is just kind of coming back in and reclaiming that space. But here it is, the berm here. There is a berm underneath this, and it's about a 1.5 foot tall ridge of soil. And so the all gold now has grown, it's about that tall on top of that much soil underneath. Extremely drought tolerant. I have to water this maybe once or twice a year during the worst drought. And when it's way up in the 90s, you can actually see the new growth will wilt just a little bit. But the fact that it's made it through more than a decade of the worst droughts, in this case without flipping the switch for irrigation, it's a testament to how drought tolerant it is. It also falls down into a depression that we've dug as a rain garden. And I've seen this plant stay submerged for over a month, in the cool season especially. And it does just fine. It's kind of weird to see. In fact, over there, it's growing around its enveloped lotus. And so it's kind of hanging out on top of water and doing just fine with that. But it's one of my favorite ground covers. Again, it's over a foot thick, so even those golden rain tree seedlings and any kind of, you know, crabgrass, nothing really.
This is one that I really, really love when we see it. So juniper is actually number 2 on the list, and we're gonna. Yep. This is 2B.
2B.
All right.
2B.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, Juniperous horizontalis, which is aptly named pancake.
Right. Which blue rug juniper is a horizontalis.
As is mother lode. There's another horizontalis there, but far too slow unless you've got enough money to buy a truckload of them and plant them on 1 foot centers. But
right.
Juniperous Pancake is, I mean, that's how tall it is right there, and that's as tall as it'll ever get.
Yeah.
It's just taken off. I haven't had this for too long yet. I'm feeling out how to use it, where to use it. I've got it in some crevices. It's looking really good in the crevices.
Yeah.
It does seem to want some moisture though in our heat, or it can stall out. But it's short, but it's so dense. I have not noticed that there are many weeds that get through it.
Yeah, it's super soft to the touch.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Weirdly, it's not, I mean, blue rug's not the spikiest juniper, but it is spiky. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one is incredibly dense, compact, flat to the ground.
And it's favorably eating this exposed irrigation line.
Right.
That's just fine with me.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when it gets to a point, I can trim it with the weed eater or a shovel edge. It's easy to keep under control. And I've seen it here and there on the market. Plant Delights has sold it a couple different times.
Yeah.
But it's on the market enough to where I think someone could find a commercial source and get 20 or 30 of them somewhere and really make that incredible mass. Another one of my favorite ground cover junipers is Juniperous Procumbens nana. And you said you grew a lot of these back in the wholesale business.
I grew a whole bunch of Procumbens nana. Just look at the thing.
These are all over the United States, north to south. I think they're zone 4.
Yeah, right.
Hardiness.
9.
They survived in our containers through the winter. I know we'd mentioned that before, and they don't like it, but they're alive. And that's good enough for me in this case. I did a little research on this plant. It was released in 1922, so it's been around 101 years. It's absolutely. This is 3 plants, and they've been here 1 gallon pots from a box store 3 years ago. So they're really taking off. Easy to cut back. They're a little pokey, but that's normal gloves are fine. And I like to if I'm pruning it back, I'll just lift one piece and then clip underneath it. And it's very easy. Not too many weeds are able to get through here. This is also another spot that is prone to drying out. and I don't have irrigation here yet. So again, it's been a 95-degree day. I've got enough on my plate in this garden. This is here's 40 square feet that I can just enjoy. It's there, it looks great, and it does not care that it was 95 and dry.
Yeah, we did a installation down in Southern Pines last year, and they had these where they had not been pruned.
Yeah.
For like 40 or 50 years, and they had gotten to the point where they had bonsai'd themselves, and then they were like a whole nother thing had happened.
They get this little bubble on top.
They do, and then they looked like somebody had spent the time bonsaiing them, and we're like, no, leave them, because now they're unique in a different way. Number 3 on the Great Groundcovers list.
Yeah, one of our favorite ground covers here in the shade under a really pretty but unfortunately declining water oak tree is Mondo Grass, and a lot of people have heard that name. This is Ophiopogon japonicus nana, and Megan and I we started out with a patch about maybe 1 to 2 square feet, and over several years I've been dividing it. In the last 5 years, Megan and I have been splitting it up, and we'll just kind of do a little butt scoot around the ground and plug it in all over. And it takes about 2 years in this situation where it gets a little dry. It takes about 2 years to really fill into the carpet that it is. And that's just as tall as it gets, so we don't mow it. We don't really have to do anything. It's completely evergreen.
Right, yeah.
In zone 7B, it doesn't even know that it ever gets cold.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's true. You could buy one full 1 gallon and divide it into 10 plants and take forever to do this, or you could spend some money and get it. It's just how much money do you want to spend? Because either way, it's going to happen.
It's a great lesson in exponential interest too.
Right,
Start with 1, then 2, then 4, and it just keeps going up. So now we can dig 2 or 3 square feet and do 20 or 30 square feet. Anytime we want.
I like it in spaces where you're using it like this, or in between bricks or stones or whatever, because it actually keeps some weeds down. There's sometimes you can't figure out something, other than mulch and Roundup to keep weeds down, and this is one of those things that actually does a pretty good job. There'll be some things that'll come up in it, but it's
once it's established, and that's really the key. Is it takes a couple years of just biting the bullet and weeding it. Number 4, Schizophragma Hydrangea Moonlight.
Right.
It's probably one of the most fun plants to say in the whole garden. This is a plant that for me started really, really slow. I think I got 3 plants 11 years ago now.
Right.
But all 3 survived long before I ever had decent soil or good irrigation.
Right.
They just barely stayed alive, and then in the last 4 or 5 years got some irrigation in here, better soil, and you can see its first mode of action isn't necessarily to climb up a tree or a fence. It would rather be a ground cover first.
Right, which is not unique. I mean, not all. A lot of them are either or.
That's right. Yeah. And I think this will be a nice mixture. It's not so fast and so aggressive that it can't be controlled either.
Right.
Compare this to something like an English ivy, certainly apples to oranges, but this is anything but invasive. It's welcome here. It is deciduous.
Right.
And so I like the look of the little hairy little fuzzy things that come up in the winter. And And
we planted these on a landscape job in Raleigh. If you've seen that multi-part landscape job that Steph designed that we've installed in Raleigh, we planted these on a retaining wall, and it's a very moist spot at the base of that retaining wall, and they took off really quick.
Yeah.
You've got these Nellie Stevens hollies on one side and the Metasequoia on the other.
Yeah.
And it's probably, until you got irrigation, was like, oh, what's happening?
Yeah, they grew about a foot a year for 10 years, and now they absolutely jumped now that it can be kept moist.
And the species name is hydrangea-like.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So similar to a climbing hydrangea, and one of those, if it's climbing on something, I think you would, if you didn't know this plant, you would probably, your first guess might be climbing hydrangea.
If you see it flower, which this is shy to flower, but if it does, that is a lace cap hydrangea. It's exactly like a lace cap hydrangea. Another great ground cover that I've really come to enjoy in the Bristal Briar, because again, it's more space that I can just check off the list. It's a great garden plant, it looks good, and I don't have to do anything to it, is Sedum. And I think not all Sedum are created equal. This is one of the best in my opinion. Sedum spurium John Creech, I think is what this one is called. And it stays super low, kind of like Juniperous Pancake. And a few weeds get through it, but the plant is so low and compact that generally the weeds will pop up through it, stick their neck out, and I just pop them right out. So it reduces the number of weeds, and it also is easily weeded at the same time. It benefits from a little bit of water, but they are somewhat drought tolerant. All right, here's another Sedum here in the Bristal Briar. It gets pretty dry here. There's a little bit of irrigation here and there, but it gets about 6-8 inches thick, and it really suppresses the weeds. There's not a lot that can get through it, but established things or larger things with a lot of underground storage like this ginger, they shoot right through it, and it just makes an amazing carpet for them. So here I am standing in a hole. I really like cattails. I've always liked them, even as a little kid going fishing, in the way that if you get snagged on them, you will not get that hook back. But just, it's like nature's corn dogs, right? And they're not in flower yet, but really enjoy that. But, here's this pit, and it always gets full of weeds. And so this will fill up with water. Anytime we get a good rain, we've got our downspout, dumps right into it. This can completely fill up when we get 3 or 4 inches of rain, but always gets quite a bit of water in it when we get a normal rain. But here we are, Trachelospermum asiaticum snow rose, a wonderful evergreen ground cover. Would rather run on the ground than climb, but it climbs. And here it is, just the right amount of climbing. Very exciting. So not very many weeds get through, an occasional oxalis, which can get through almost anything. But the great thing about this plant is that it grows down in the bottom of this pit and will get completely covered in water for weeks at a time sometime, and it does just fine with that. Everywhere it grows, we can begin to, if it's competing directly with something, we'll just pick which one we want to win. And this is a plant that's really taken off here in the last 3 years. I actually got it originally as a couple little cell packs, and they sat there for 2 or 3 years. And now they're just exploding. And I'm moving this around the Bristal Briar. I want more
we see it in more and more gardens too. This color is just hard. It's hard to beat.
It really is.
Yeah, anytime it's actively growing, it's doing some kind of color mutation.
It's just starting to become established. I haven't had this one as long as Snow Rose, but this is Trachelospermum asiaticum theta. And I like the leaf shape on this thing, and it is starting to fill in to where it's going to begin to choke out weeds and do a little bit of climbing. So I'm excited to see where this goes in the next couple of years. All right.
This might be number 7.
I don't know. Yeah, we've lost count.
Yeah, we have lost count.
There's so many great things growing, and we get distracted by all the bees
like
we did on that teucrium.
Yes.
A great, well, I'm guessing it's native to Texas, this Scutellaria suffrutescens Texas rose. And I've had these now for a few years. This berm here has only been here for 2 years now. But you can see in 2 years from a 1-quart pot, this is it. And it roots as it goes. It's easy to transplant. It is very drought tolerant, although it will continue to bloom better if it gets some, just a little bit. There's no irrigation here, but I will walk by it with the hose.
Yeah, and you've got several of them planted occasionally with other things interspersed in them.
Bees love it.
Yeah,
and it doesn't compete really with much else. I mean, it's growing with this Mangave falling waters here, just in perfect harmony. And over here around that juniper, it looks great. The Callilophus, they're just crashing into each other.
Yeah.
It's ideal, and it's just a great garden plant. I don't know if you're going to see this in a big mass. It's certainly doable. I mean, I could have covered this whole thing with 7 plants, and that would be all you would have then is this Texas rose.
Yeah. This is one of our go-tos for sure. Is lots of ajuga, but this one's pretty special.
It stays dark. I've seen other dark foliaged cultivars, but they kind of wash out once you get above 80, 85. black scallop. So Ajuga Reptons, I think it is just Reptons,
Right.
black scallop. It is a patented variety. But here it is in, I would call this part shade, moderate shade.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely beautiful here.
Yeah. It's got a larger leaf too, so it's really.
It does.
Yeah.
And I've seen sometimes it can get an even larger leaf if it's a somewhat wet soil.
Right.
But it, it just goes great with these beautiful Asarum leaves here. It's not completely eating the rocks.
Yeah. Right.
The Sedum japonicum, I have to, unfortunately, they fight, and it's not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
But with a little help, the Ajuga wins.
Yeah. The Brunera, the
yeah.
Carex, everything looks great. What's the flower like on? Is it a good, pretty good flowering one, or is it more?
It's okay. I think my favorite flower would be probably Metallica crispa purpurea. It's like, I like the flower on that one because the leaves are so curled and contorted.
Oh, gotcha. It makes the flower stand out.
It does, and it's just fun to say. It's like I'm casting a horticultural spell.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, one of my favorite ground covers. I've even seen this. It kind of can grow out over the water a little bit as a marginal, so you can grow this in very wet soil. But with this density, it doesn't let a lot of weeds through. It grows even denser in more sun, and with water, it can grow in full sun. All right, Porosia, one of my favorite ferns, and it also happens to be an exciting ground cover. Leather leaf, and I just say Porosia generally as the genus of fern, because there's a lot of different species. Some of them are more forked, some of them have some patterning in the leaf. But this is just good old Porosia. I think it's lingua, and here it is growing. It gets really, really dark back in there, but that's okay, and it kind of comes out. There's some irrigation in here now, but you know what? This survived the first 7 years without irrigation, and it even when it gets really hot and dry out, it doesn't show that it's stressed. It can take some pretty good drought, but here it is in full shade, and then over here, again, these are just kind of some areas, more utilitarian areas of the Bristal Briar. But one of the great things about this, and ground covers in general, here it is growing in north-facing sun, and it is growing with Mondo Grass. So the Ophiopogon nana here as well looks great, and so you've got like a double whammy for weeds. One thing I love about ground covers is it gives you, it's like a gateway to these incredible plant combinations, successional plantings where one thing grows in advance of another and then you edit it out. But here you've got a great combination of Porosia with Ophiopogon, and then some spring ephemerals like this Trillium, which is pretty much shot for the year. They come up through that. One thing I love about Porosia is you get these little rabbit foot fern leaders. So this little hairy foot here is coming from this Porosia. You can see that grown right on the rock. I guess you could call it semi-epiphytic. It needs soil, but it's not going to go deep into the soil. It's going to be right there on the surface. These runners come out, they weave through the Mondo Grass, come out to the sun, and then these little knobs here will shoot leaves up.
The last one we're going to show you is one that probably, if he turns his back, I'm going to have a shovel out here and we're going to take a piece of this one home. This is one of my favorite plants in your garden, really.
This is an incredible new introduction from Plant Delight's nursery. It's my understanding that this came from wild collected genetics out of Montana, and it's a new species. It's so exciting. Not only is it a great plant, but it's a new species of something that we've all heard of. And a lot of people who know a few plants probably recognize this as goldenrod, it's what this is. This is a new species of goldenrod called Montana Mini, and it runs, but here it is. That's as tall as it gets. And it's growing out from shade. It actually does just fine growing into the shade sun. Well, there's a weed there, found its way in. It grows out from the shade as needed. It can take some dry soils. It can take some heavy soils. I mean, it's a goldenrod, right? So we know how that is. I'm really hoping that somebody decides to try to breed this with some of the classic varieties that, you know, like Solar Flare and some of those great ones that are.
But it's also blooming. We're here in June.
Yeah.
And this is like a couple months early for typical goldenrod.
Yeah, I believe there are a few goldenrod species that do bloom in the spring, but yeah, this is, the classic goldenrods are more of a fall and summer event. And here it is, yeah, it's June. It's going to continue looking good through the summer. It does run, but it's not going to compete with anything.
No, it'd be easy to control this one.
It really
You
is.
can look at it until it's,
and you can
take a shovel and do
yeah,
what you need to do
I can
to
pull it up even.
Yeah,
and
right.
there it is. So
Right.
there's some free plants right there.
Okay, I don't have to use the shovel.
No, there's no need for the shovel on this. It's just
All right.
an outstanding ground cover.
That's just a few of your ground covers. The cat mint next to me, and you know, they're all around us. There's a salvia behind you, another salvia down here on the ground. There's a sedum underneath you.
Yeah, there's just all kinds of things here
Right.
coming together
Yeah.
to cover the ground, and again, it's just so many advantages to living mulch versus
Yeah.
you know, triple shred and the things that they do a lot of the same thing as far as weed suppression and moisture retention and buffering the temperature in the soil.
Right.
But you know, mulch doesn't attract pollinators. Mulch doesn't create its own organic matter over time.
Yeah.
It just and
Break soil up, and you know,
Yeah.
we're rooting down in the ground. But we see. I think there's a lot of thing in folks' minds. Sometimes they think if they plant things close, then that's going to require twice as much water,
Yeah.
and it just doesn't end up working out that way. They shade themselves. They keep themselves cooler. They seem to use less water overall. You know, not under stress.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right,
they work with each other.
Yeah. Well, make sure you go back and watch the video for the construction of our seating area
Yep.
right here, and how much this has changed. You're not going to believe the two videos. We did a planning video for this, and then we did a it's complete, but of course you can see all the soil at that time. Yeah.
Had a little GoPro footage of the skid steer pushing soil up
Yeah,
and moving
yeah.
rocks around. And,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's 13 months. Is that it was
Yeah.
April of 2022, and now we're in June of 2023. So maybe that's 14 months.
And
I
it's
don't
just completely settled in. It looks like it was here. It looks like it was built at the same time everything else was.
know. That was the goal, and couldn't
Right.
have done that without ground covers. That's what makes that possible.
Nice. Okay. Well, thank you, Jeremy.
Oh,
Appreciate
thanks
you.
for coming
yeah,
out.
Thank you. Thank you for being on, everybody. Always the videos I have with you are always, you know, I think people really enjoy them, and they can feel your, you know, how much you love this.
I hope it makes the garden a better place to be.
Yeah. Thanks.